Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 21st Century Business Forum. I'm your host, Clay Young. Now, this morning, we are fortunate to have Lamar President and Chief Executive Officer Sean Reilly with us. Now, we've all heard stories about the turn of the 20th century brands who no longer dominate the marketplace because they failed to innovate. Sears, Kodak, Blockbuster, the list goes on. Our guest this morning leads a company that was founded in 1902. That's right, 120 years ago. But unlike those we mentioned, this company has in our time emerged as one of the most innovative marketing companies in the nation. Once a family-owned business, Lamar Advertising Company is now publicly traded and has grown to one of the largest outdoor advertising companies in the world. With over, get this, 356,000 displays across the United States and Canada. When it comes to digital, it is ahead of its competitors with the largest network of digital billboards in the United States. As I said, we're fortunate to have Sean Reilly with us this morning to talk about the importance of transformation strategy for your business. Sean, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. All right, Sean, so walk us through the basic three most important innovations or transformations Lamar has gone through under your leadership.
Great question, Clay. So, probably the most important would be around our pioneering of large format digital in the out-of-home space. We put up the very first digital billboard in 2004. It cost $500,000. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. We were willing to take a chance. As we learned more about its capabilities and learned more about what our customers wanted out of it, we greatly refined the model. And today it's the standard in the industry. And like I said, we pioneered it. And because we were on the forefront, we now have the largest large format digital network in the world. And it's generating great revenues for Lamar, but more importantly, great results for our customers. They love it. And it's helping them build their businesses. And that's very gratifying for me. As a corollary to our pioneering digital footprint, we had to develop a network operating center that would drive those boards and allow us to individually program each one. So not as a group, we're not broadcasting here, we're narrowcasting, right? And so we pioneered that software. And what that software does is it allows our customers to change their copy from their desktops or even tie into their social media. And if something's trending on their social media, it'll automatically change the copy on our digital network. And that was some real good work we had to do, and we had to do it because we were the only guys out there with a digital network in the out-of-home space. And so I could take your picture with this and in 5 minutes have you in front of 100 million eyeballs.
Was it hard to transition because as a billboard company to go to digital? Because I'm intimately aware in my own business about the effectiveness of your digital boards. Was it a hard paradigm shift to go from the big paper boards exclusively to the digital media?
It was. And that's part of having a learning organization. Innovation isn't just about hardware and software. It's also about the people, right? Yeah. And so our account executives had to get comfortable selling it. Our ops people had to get comfortable servicing it. And so it was really a top to bottom, or I would say bottom up, transformation of our corporate culture to allow us to really maximize the technology and the software. Just to give you a sense of the order of magnitude, we have about 170,000 billboard faces.
Wow.
And only 4,000 are digital. But those 4,000 billboards, the digital ones, generate 30% of our revenue. So our net revenue this year is going to be about $2 billion total, a little north of $2 billion. So our digital footprint is about 550 million in billing this year, and growing very fast. It's growing in double-digit percentages, mainly because it's a great product and our customers love it, but also because we're adding inventory as fast as we can.
Tell me a little bit about how you went about developing the strategy for transformation.
You know, that's a great question. And I think it goes back to our number one, corporate culture, and number two, organizational chart. So we're what the business schools would call a flat, decentralized organization. We have 200 offices around the country that run, either out of home offices or transit offices or logo offices or airport offices. And we give our general managers complete autonomy to run their businesses. Not everybody does that, but we do. Mm-hmm. So a general manager of a Lamar outdoor plant turns on the lights, turns off the lights, hires, fires, and has complete control of their P&L, top to bottom. And they're compensated like they own the business. They get a profit sharing based on performance to budget on the bottom line, right? So for example, our manager in Little Rock, Arkansas is a guy named Tom Gibbons. If you ask the mayor of Little Rock who owns Lamar, he'll say Tom Gibbons, right? And we're a big public company, but we manage it to be, number one, hyper local, number two, to really, like I said, give our general managers autonomy to run their business. Now, to do that, we have to treat them like complete business people, right? And we do. And getting back to your question about a learning organization and an organization that can rapidly evolve and deploy technologies, that's part of it. That corporate culture of treating people who run your profit centers with respect and treating them like complete business people. Mm-hmm. They're going to act like complete business people, right? Because you're treating them that way. We at corporate exist to serve, right? So we don't have a command control structure. All we do, if we're doing our job right at corporate, is help our people in the field be the best they can be, whether they're a general manager, an account executive, an ops manager, or really whatever function they're in. Our job is to serve and support. And so that's, if you want to know the secret sauce, that's it.
Well, when you say the complete business person, explain that a little bit.
Well, a lot of business these days, people get siloed into specialties, right? They're either in finance, or they're in HR, or they're in legal, or they're in production, or they're in et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? If you're the general manager of a Lamar plant, and when I say plant, I mean an office in a distinct DMA, right? Be it Baton Rouge, Tallahassee, Boise, New York, LA. If you're the general manager, you have to know all of it. You got to be a complete business. You got to understand your P&L. That means finance. You got to understand your people. You got to hire well. You got to get the right people on the bus. You have to understand real estate. We're kind of a real estate intensive business. You got to know that part, and you got to know production, and you got to know sales. So you really got to know it top to bottom and across all different functions that make an outdoor company hum. So that's what I mean by complete business person.
I love that. How do you go about finding the right people to put on the bus?
We religiously promote from within. So the typical entry-level job at Lamar is account executive. Mm-hmm. And just about every one of our general managers started right out of college as a Lamar account executive. I've got 1,000 of them, right? 1,000 account executives, right? And the typical path is account executive to sales manager, maybe sales manager in a big office, let's call it Seattle. You might get the opportunity to go from there to be the general manager of a small office, let's call it Spokane, right? And it's amazing the mobility around Lamar land. I mean, people will start in Mobile, Alabama, and they'll end up running Cleveland. And that's a true story, by the way. And they love it. So we really, like I said, religiously and vigorously promote from within. There's a lot of mobility within the ranks of Lamar, and that's part of the corporate culture. The average tenure of a Lamar general manager is over 25 years. The average tenure of a Lamar regional manager, so we've got 200 offices, right? Mm-hmm. They report up to 6 regional managers, and those 6 regional managers report to me. The average tenure of those regional managers is over 35 years.
Wow.
Not in the industry. I'm talking about with Lamar.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Talk about a great corporate culture. You mentioned this earlier, but I kind of want to get into it a little bit deeper. You guys have been known for industry firsts. I mean, you talked about the digital billboards that debuted in 2001, and in 2006, you created the industry's first network operating center to monitor and support the boards nationwide. So, from your experience, what's the best strategy for companies to stay on the cutting edge of new technology, particularly in competitive industries around the country?
Sure. Well, I talked about, having a corporate culture that allows people to take a chance, mm-hmm. right? Not everything works out. Okay. And we have that kind of corporate culture. And then also getting the right people that are passionate about what they do. I'll give you another example of sort of innovation in Lamar land. And this is not around technology. This is around sustainability, right? Bobby Switzer happens to be my cousin.
Really?
He's retired now, but he was very, very early and passionate about sustainability in the billboard business. And so he pioneered the use of PEC, polyethyl chloride, as our substrate. That's what we print on and hang up on a billboard, right? Not the digital ones, the static ones. And it replaced paper and paste, which was not recyclable, right? So that was all going to the landfill. Well, now that we're using PEC as our substrate to print on, it's fully recyclable. It also makes for better image quality, so our customers like it better. It looks sharper, stays up longer, and has the added benefit of being more eco-friendly. Staying on Bobby's themes, he was also concerned about our electric bill, right? After our ground leases and our people expense, our largest expense is our electric bill for keeping on the lights, right, at night for the billboards. And Bobby pioneered 2 things. One, the use of solar panels on billboards to generate during the day, feed the grid, and then draw power at night. And so where we're able to deploy solar, we actually have a 0 carbon footprint on our billboards.
Wow.
And then the other thing he did was pioneered and developed these super efficient LED lights that use about 1/3 of the power of our old, incandescent lights. And again, it's not just about the breakthrough, it's also about the people, right? And in the case of the super efficient lights and the polyethylene substrate, we had to get the industry to adopt it as a standard. So it took a little leadership, right? Bobby and I and some others on our team got together with like-minded folks in the other big companies, and we convinced them, look, let's go this way as a whole industry. And we did. And so consequently, the whole industry is using less electricity to keep the lights on at night.
Fantastic. So last year, you guys acquired Colossal Media, the leading operator in hand-painted walls and murals. Walk us through how you spotted that as an opportunity for Lamar and made that decision in terms of innovation and transformation.
Sure. So yeah, it's kind of funny. We operate digital billboards where we can change them in a nanosecond, and then we also operate the slowest, oldest hand painted walls. You know, it takes 10 days to 2 weeks to execute a hand painted wall.
Wow.
So why did we get into Colossal? Number one, we actually have hand painted walls. Lamar has operated the largest hand painted wall in the world in New York. It's right outside of Penn Station on 42nd Street. Google Montefiore and Nurse, and what you'll see is a time-lapse photography of us rendering that wall. Took 2 weeks, but you can watch the video in about 4 minutes, and it's really cool. It's time-lapse, right? And it's set to music. And Montefiore is a hospital in New York, and this is during the throes of COVID, right? Everything was shut down. It's July of 2020. New York is the epicenter. And Montefiore wanted to honor their nurses. And the copy is inspirational. So anyway, I commend that to you, but that's a long-winded way of saying, so we had a little exposure to this. And when Montefiore did the time lapse and put it up on their website and put it up on their social media, it went viral. I mean, worldwide viral. And so I've got this really smart guy named Ian Dallimore. He's the head of our all things digital at Lamar. And I went to him with the video and I said, this is the coolest thing, because it's not just about the painted wall, right? It's about the viral messaging that went out, right? And Montefiore was pumped. I mean, they were just so pumped about this whole thing. I said, who does this? And he goes, well, there's a company called Colossal, and they're the largest hand-painted mural company in the country. And he said, they do this all the time. Their customer will be, Gucci, Prada, Nike, whatever. They'll do a rendering, they'll time lapse it, they'll put it up on social media, it'll go viral. And so it's not just about the eyeballs walking by the wall, right? It's about penetrating social media with just a really cool message. And so anyway, that's how we found it. That's how we decided to approach them and say, look, I think if we get together, we can grow your business. And, they operate mostly in New York and LA and Chicago. And my dream for them is to take them further down into middle markets, not necessarily just New York, LA, Chicago, but, why not Baton Rouge, right?
Right.
Why not Kansas City? Why not St. Louis? Why not Seattle? So, it's going to take us a little time to get there, but I think we're going to look back in 10 years and we will have seen that Colossal has grown faster than the overall industry. So that's what we're hoping.
With so many offices across the country and in Canada, how do you maintain a transformative and innovative minded workforce and culture to keep them engaged? How do you do that?
Well, I talked about autonomy, and that's critical. And again, every company doesn't run themselves the way we do, but we find that works for us. There's a couple of other, I think, important ingredients when it comes to, again, you put your finger on it. We're in Baton Rouge. How do we make sure that in Boise, Idaho, they feel like they're part of us, right? So we talk a lot about family. And there's a couple of reasons for that. As you know, our roots are a family business. We were founded in 1902. We're celebrating, by the way, our 120th anniversary as we speak, right? In about 2 weeks, we're going to have all those managers I'm talking about in New Orleans and The Mannings are going to be up on stage, and we're going to talk about building a legacy family. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But so we talk a lot about family. And the other reason we talk about family is if you look at these offices, I'll talk about Little Rock, right? So Tom Gibbons has run Little Rock for 20 years. He's got a sales manager. He's got 6 account executives. He's got an operations manager on the ops side. He's got 4 trucks and 8 ops people that they go out and hang the vinyls or go out and fix the digitals, whatever they're doing. He's got a real estate manager, and he's got a person called a charter. And then he's got an office manager. So what I just described to you is a fairly small office, right? You're talking about, let's call it 20 people. And they're also have been working together for a long time, right? And they sort of get this family sense about their culture. So we talk about that a lot. We talk about that. As I mentioned, we're a bottom up, not a top down organization. And to do that, you can't have heavy handed command and control rules and regs coming out of corporate. Rather, what you need, again, is sort of a service ethic, and no sort of top-down mission statement stuff. We have a couple of business principles we live by, and I talk about them every time I go out and visit an office. They're not even really business philosophies. They're kind of life philosophies. The first one is the golden rule. Treat others like you want to be treated. I mean, we learn it when we're little kids, and sometimes we forget it when we turn into, hard-nosed business people. But
right,
I find that, if you keep that top of mind, that the business problems solve themselves, right? And then the other thing we live by is leave it better than you found it. And by that, mostly I mean the community. Again, we operate in cities with their blessing. And we've been operating there for, in some cases, over 100 years. And it's just important that we think about the community, we reach out to the community, we give back to the community. This year we'll donate $150 million worth of space to community nonprofits across the country.
Wow.
So anyway, those 2 things, that's it. Golden rule, leave it better than you found it.
I love that. You guys began, you referenced it earlier, as a private company and then went public, growing it into one of the biggest media companies in the country. So you've evolved and embraced digital technology, which made impossible possible when you think about it with billboards. What's been the most significant lesson that you've learned from that?
I kind of touched on it earlier. And I get reminded of this by our head of IT, Savinder Singh. He says this all the time. He says, look, IT and digital and whiz-bang tech, it comes and goes. But what doesn't come and go if you run your business right are your people. And it's got to be about the people. You can have the best supportive sales tool in the world for your account executives, but if you don't make it such that they buy in and that there is adoption, it's just another piece of space junk. So just don't forget the people part and the adoption part of whatever it is you're trying to push through your company in the way of best practices or innovation, right?
How do you encourage adoption?
That's a good question. We don't have a whole lot of thou shouts coming out of Baton Rouge, right? You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
So it takes a deft touch, a sense that it's not, hi, we're from corporate, we're here to help you, right? We've been working on this, we think it's a good idea, what do you think? And Do you think it will help you do your job better?
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned this earlier, and not to belabor the point, I think it's important about autonomy in your individual markets. And you think about it, much like yourself. I mean, I travel a lot, and the culture in the same company, but in different cities, it's going to be different in the way that, Baton Rougeans move to their own beat, same as Atlanta or Los Angeles or New York. But you're able to maintain that consistent Lamar quality while allowing individual personality in different markets. I think that's fascinating. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And look, it manifests itself in a lot of different ways, right? I mean, look, we don't wear coats and ties around Baton Rouge.
Yeah, well,
I noticed you're looking at me now. But in New York, it's sort of accepted business practice that if you're going to make a sales call, you're going to be looking sharp, right?
Yeah.
And so what works in Las Vegas might not work in Greenville, South Carolina, right?
Right.
So, we allow the offices to take on the character of their community, right? And you have to do that, right? And it works. It works, and it primarily works. And again, we were talking about culture, and I mentioned the average tenure of our general managers. It's like 25 years, right? Yeah. And they travel, right? So Chris Cockrell, who runs our Manhattan, New York City office, right? He grew up in Alabama. And now he's running a very important office for us in New York City. And so he was able to take, what he learned running a plant for us in Alabama and take it to New York. And when we bought New York, I think it was like 2007. He had a predecessor, GM, who had also been steeped in Lamar culture, who laid the groundwork. But then he goes up there and he says, okay, guys, this is New York. We're going to be Big Apple, right? But we're also going to be Green Lamar, and we're going to do it the way that Lamar does it, in terms of nuts and bolts of running a billboard company. And again, treating people with respect, the golden rule, leave it better than you found it, and everything else will take care of itself.
Sean, we've talked so much about transformation because so many companies, especially after COVID, they want to transform. They need to transform really to stay afloat. So what inspires or really drives the transformation?
I'm probably going to, let me lean on Jim Collins a little bit.
Okay.
Jim Collins wrote a great business book. I commend it to everyone. It's called Good to Great. And when, as he describes it, companies that make that leap from good to great, and not every company does, they have certain characteristics that they all kind of hold. The first is they're a hedgehog. I don't know why he calls it a hedgehog, but there's this old story about the fox does many things, but the hedgehog does one thing really, really well, right? And so I think at Lamar we do one thing really, really well. We are by far the best operators of middle market billboard companies in the world, and we set out to be that. And we didn't get distracted. We didn't do other stuff. That's it. This is what we do, and we built our culture around it, our values around it.
Sounds like Raising Cane's.
It's exactly like Raising Cane's. And
when you were talking,
Todd,
it's like,
yeah.
Look, Todd's a buddy too. When you're talking, I'm like, wait a minute, did they co-write that line together? Because that's like, I love that.
I've talked to Todd about this, and it makes a difference. He does One Love better than anybody in the world, and we do middle market billboard companies better than anyone in the world, and the results speak for themselves. I mean, our enterprise value is about $13 billion now, and that makes us the most valuable out-of-home company in the world. in the world. You could add up the other three public billboard companies, Clear Channel out front and JC Decode worldwide, and they don't add up to our market cap. That's stunning, right?
Yeah.
And that's because we're a hedgehog. This is what we do, right? You add to that what Jim Collins calls, fifth level leadership. It's all very academic, but I like to call it servant leadership. You think about the team first, then about you.
Yep.
And not all CEOs can walk that walk. They talk it, but they don't necessarily walk it. And then finally, get the right people on the bus. We were talking about that. That's Jim Collins' quote. If that's, and again, that's why we are fanatics about hiring from within. Because
I love that.
Yeah.
So name some other companies that you think are doing innovation and transformation well. We talked about our buddy Todd Graves and what they do at Raising Cane's, but are there any other companies that you would name?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually stay in the family here.
Okay.
So I'm the chairman of the board of Rev Broadband. Rev was formerly ETEL, Reserve, and Vision. It's a broadband company that we operate in Baton Rouge on business broadband, and we do residential and business in all the parishes between Baton Rouge and New Orleans and running down to the Gulf Coast, Lafourche down to Grand Isle. And it's a very underappreciated, very innovative company, mostly on the customer service side. Just a lot of attention to detail, a little bit of groundbreaking in terms of being able to troubleshoot without going into a house. We had to learn it during COVID, right? You couldn't go into the house, so you had to figure out a way to not have to roll a truck to fix somebody's either cable TV or broadband. Innovation isn't just, again, as I said about tech. In Rev Broadband's case, you're talking about a company that's 90 years old, started with copper wires and the telephone business, and has completely transformed itself to a state-of-the-art broadband company. They not only transformed the technology piece, but also the branding piece. We just rebranded the whole company, Rev Broadband, and we've abandoned the word telephone that was in our name, ETEL, right? Or Reserve Telephone, right? So anyway, it amazes me what Josh Descant and his team, Harris and Peter and those folks, they're on their game, and what do you know? They are in Gonzales, Louisiana, as their headquarters.
I love that. In terms of transformation, what do you believe the future holds for big old Lamar and all of us in business?
Well, what I remind our people of is what we do is not brain surgery, right? So you don't have to wake up in the morning and be paranoid like the guy that founded Intel was famous for saying. You don't have to wake up every morning and be paranoid to be in the out-of-home business, but you do have to adapt. You will occasionally have to change. We don't have to, in some cases, necessarily be at the cutting edge of tech. We can be a fast follower. Like, for example, we were a fast follower when it came to rolling out Salesforce to our account executives, right? We didn't just blow out there and say, look, we need the hottest CRM for our account executives. We took our time on that one. But now we have, universal adoption on a state-of-the-art CRM program for our account executives, right? So that's just sort of an example of what I was referencing earlier. It's not always about the whiz bang. It's got to be about the people. It's got to be about adoption. So yeah, I think every organization needs to be a learning organization, right? You just have to be. And if you have the right people on the bus, as we were talking about, then the learning happens.
All right, to close, what 3 things would you advise someone starting a business or a CEO who is now taking over a business? What would be the advice you would give him?
Get to know Todd Graves. Todd has that famous story of writing a undergraduate paper for a business class about a single SKU restaurant with just chicken fingers, and he got, I think, a D- on it. I would get back to being a hedgehog.
Yeah.
You can't do everything better than everybody. The competition can be fierce. You have to do one thing and do it well. And you have to be convinced that it's in your DNA to do one thing better than everyone else. So I'd start with that. Get the right people on the bus. Like what Jim Collins likes to say is, if you figure out the who, the what will take care of itself. Yeah. And so, you got to have good people. And to get good people, you have to demonstrate to them, number one, that they're going to be on a winning team, and that number 2, you're a servant leader. And, do those things. I think that was 3. Yeah, that's 3 things. Do those.
That's 3. That's 3. Listen, this has been great. And obviously I'm fortunate enough to know about the work Lamar does and how you've operated here. And you're right. It's great to see. And then this era of the can-do business person, I think you're right. You can't be that wandering generality. You need to be that meaningful, specific. So Sean, thank you so much for the time, brother. I appreciate it.
Loved it. All good. Thank you, Clay. Appreciate it.
All right. I'd like to also thank our sponsors who made today's webcast possible, as well as all of you, our viewers, for tuning in. Now, join me next month as I sit down with Tim Kite, CEO of Focus 3, when we redefine leadership in the pursuit of being relentless. We'll see you next month.